Travels of the Ellis Arbor is an audio narrative set in the world of Bastion using 5e compatible characters. A dark fantasy world with chaos, intrigue, magic, and mystery. The story, setting, and sounds are written by Lonomy and published by lonomy.creative. Tune in for episode 1, Adrift. Brine. The hot sands and swelling tides of Var Elamora lap heavily upon the sand where they now dwell. Darian, the roguish, black-haired captain of the Ellis Arbor, awakes, head pounding with an insistent beat as he clutches his chest. Veins of black magic wind its way up his arms as he begins to loose his tight grip of the black stone amulet at his chest. In a moment, the throbbing turns to a faint hum, and his breath returns, slowly, steadily. The rest of the crew, Nout, a jade-skinned first mate and artificer. Edward, a gunsmith and youngest member of the crew. And more, a stout, red-capped Myconid and the group's most peculiar member. They sit and watch as Darian finally rises from the greying sands. "Captain, what was that? Where are we? This doesn't look like Cabalan. What are these stone walls?"
"Calm yourself, Ed. This isn't home. This is somewhere else entirely."
He looks around, wincing in the harsh sunlight and gazing up at the tall, mildew and moss-covered walls that tower against the horizon.
Although, perhaps this is more like home than we could have asked for.
"What do you mean? Nout, what does the captain mean?" Edward turns toward their squat, green-skinned companion, tossing open his engorged rucksack full of trinkets and tools and emptying them onto the sand.
"Indeed, Captain. I believe this is the realm of men. Even so far as Bastion, men and elves and dwarves call this their home. From the maps we have collected, I believe it is known as Farage."
He busily tosses his belongings once more, looking for something. He tosses another bag to the side, jingling with gemstones and coin, and reaches for a large, flat book, gilded in bronze and laid with a pretty orange cover. Dusting off the tome, he opens it to a page and points eagerly.
"Yes, here. I believe we've landed on the shores of the Meladonian coast. Western side. Looks like these are the walls of something called the Briny Ward."
Both Darian and Edward turn their noses to the sky, breathing deeply of the ocean air.
Indeed. I can't imagine why they call it briny.
He chuckles to himself, noting the faint attempt at sarcasm. With a sudden look of shock, Edward turned to their mushroom companion, Moore, grabbing him by the shoulder. "Moore, tell us, are we in any immediate danger? Is the ocean going to attack us again?" Shrugging off the boy's arm, Moore takes a few steps away from the ocean and toward the heavy, aging walls of the city. Clutching his fists, he begins to shake, wildly, squeezing and groaning as he does. With a vibrant puff of red mist and the distinct sound of rushing wind, spores begin to dance out of his body, cascading through the air in elaborate, spiraling patterns. Faintly, they dance through the air and encompass the group. Then, they swing upward with the ocean breeze dancing toward the stone walls and over the precipice. Finally, with a rush of wind, the spores begin to wisp into a column of brilliant and dazzling red, sailing over the ocean and cascading past the faintly crashing waves of the beach. He speaks up in a quiet and reserved tone.
More.
There's a moment of pause as both Nout and Darian turn to the young, gunslinging companion.
"Well, care to translate? Are we in any danger or not?"
Oh, no. Moore seems to think there aren't any immediate threats in this area. I think we're safe for now.
Well then, that'll be the best news you hear today, I suspect.
Darian turns toward the footprints on the shore, toward a cove due southeast of their position.
Looks like we better find somewhere to get comfortable. I don't suspect we're going anywhere anytime soon. The ocean saw fit to allow us another day to escape her grasp. Why don't we grab some breakfast? I could use some coffee. The rest of you?
Both Nout and Edward nod in agreement. The four of them, now gathered in sore, boots full of sand, tread toward the oceanward gate, into the briny ward. A rusted iron sign meets them as they enter the city. No guards or watchmen seem to patrol this edge of town, though the portcullis gate is risen. The sign reads, Polymoss Wharf, and seems likely to crack and fall at any time.
I'm sure there are bound to be some civilized folk. Fishermen love sailors, right?
The captain is met only with shrugs as they step into the cobblestone streets. Winding eastward, the road takes them by a stable and homestead. No more than a few dozen sailors and simple folk, tending to their wares and feeding hay to their stock. The sun seems only to have broken within an hour or so. Too early yet for the first catches of the day to be brought in. Fishermen would still be out on their boats, leaving stocks and barrels dry and ready for what offerings they could pull up. As they walk, it is all too noticeable how much attention they draw. Darian himself is a foreboding silhouette, clad in gold rings on one hand, a tailored black leather breastplate against fine clothes and tall boots, a silver pistol holstered to his side, while a twisted black hammer hangs loosely from the other. Edward, equally gaudy, sports long gloves and boots, and a regal blue cloak that evokes the finest in tailory, despite its clearly military origins. Though it is not the lavish hedonism with which the locals are drawn. Nout, a Cyanite, resident of the towering sky towns of Arfara, is notably squat and abrasive, sharing more traits with goblins than other more kindly humanoids. Stranger still is Moore, a toadstool myconid that had found its way aboard the deck of the Ellis Arbor one strange morning. Though they had taken a shining to Darian and the crew, it was not without hesitation from those who knew too well. They stood less than 4 feet tall, a bright red cap covering most of their face, and skin that was pale and sickly. Red spots adorned their arms and torso, with smaller, pretty toadstools growing out at odd angles. Were it not for the spiked straps and cobbled armor they wore as they bounced along behind Edward, Moore would almost seem adorable, and almost likable. Though the alien features and odd presence gave many reason to be wary of the Mushroom Man. As the heat began to set in, the crew made do with the first tavern they came across. Bristol Mill, its name was. The interior of which was a simple barn-like house, with tables and chairs scattered throughout the rickety floor. The central feature of the tavern was a decrepit windmill, the origin for the building and clearly revered by its regular patrons. The smell of ale and baking bread was punctuated only by the overwhelming stench of fish and salt water. Tossing a gold piece to Edward, Darian took a seat at a corner booth, away from the eyes of the morning crowd, took off his boots and squirreled away with a cup of coffee. It was bitter and barely warm to the touch, but it would have to do. Turning away from the bar and the rest of the crew, he peered through the faint gap in a moss-covered window, taking in the bright morning sun as it pierced the dimly lit room. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled a glass bottle, corked on one end, and sealed with a crimson wax. Holding it up to the beams of sunlight, A radiant sparkle danced through the glass and silhouetted its contents. Drinking in every detail, he gleaned over the majesty of the ship he once captained, now diminished to a model. A replica of its grandiose splendor, the Ellis Arbor. It swayed to and fro in the small glass bottle. Images swelled in his mind of a ship across the ocean, daring harsh waves and storming through vast channels. In his mind, he was back upon the ocean with his beloved, the ship he once called family, now turned keepsake in the pocket of his coat. At least, he thought, she was able to save him from the red ocean waves that lingered dangerously close the night before. Travels of the Ellis Arbor is made possible by the generous support of our subscribers and followers, and most notably, our patrons. Thanks to Rob Jenkin, Ensign Turtle, and Nathan Ebley for supporting us so far on this journey. Please subscribe, give a like or a comment, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned for the next episode. Don't forget, take care of each other.